had always had this really rocky relationship with my body, with food, and was always like reaching and striving to just be smaller, to build a relationship with myself and with my body with a completely new, solid foundation it's been everything.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mastering Mindfulness Institute podcast. Today is going to be a really special, beautiful journey that we get to go on together. I have Nicole Lilly here with me, and she is one of the first beginning OGs of Mastering Mindfulness, of one of the people who had the courage to say, I want to do the deeper inner work and the self-exploration. And sometimes it's a winding journey that we never know what is next. But I think that where the wisdom really comes from is not so much in ideas and frameworks and strategy, but more of like, what does this look like in real life, in somebody's life? And so, Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here.
I can't wait. I can't wait to hear just what has transpired for you, because you joined Mastering Mindfulness probably 5 or so years ago.
Yeah.
And you were like so committed and dedicated to it. And now, since then, I've just watched you blossom into this beautiful relationship with yourself and into now you're coaching and doing courses and teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
What has it really meant for you?
My goodness gracious. To put that into words is difficult, but it's meant everything. It's meant literally everything. I told myself not to get too emotional here because this conversation is emotional for me, but to build a relationship with myself and with my body with a completely new, solid foundation it's been everything.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. To put that into words. I don't know how. And I didn't know stepping into this that that's what the outcome was going to be. I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. I remember feeling hopeless. I remember feeling like I just don't think I can. And then for this to be the outcome on the other end, like I never would have imagined it.
What gave you that courage then? If you were really hopeless, what gave you that courage?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that it might have been me. So my daughter was 3-4 months old when I found you. And I can remember, I've spent 10 plus years in the corporate wellness space, doing mindfulness work, health and wellness. But I had always had this really rocky relationship with my body, with food, and was always like reaching and striving to just be smaller, to try to be smaller. So the relationship with my body was a really, really rocky one. And I had just gotten my coaching certification when I had my daughter. And so I knew going into pregnancy that was going to be like a really uncomfortable situation for my body. Your body's changing. And so I coached myself through it. And I had this beautiful, magnificent pregnancy. And on the other side of that, what I wasn't expecting, what I didn't anticipate was how I would feel post-pregnancy. The pregnancy was magical. The post-pregnancy felt, and it wasn't postpartum depression. It was just the helplessness and the hopelessness of, now what do I do with this body? That's changed, that's shifted, that's growing. And I just think that I laid down for a meditation. I'll never forget this. And the very first words out of the instructor's mouth were, I love you and I'm listening. And when I tell you that my entire body literally erupted into a sob, it did. It was the first time I think that my body was like, thank you.
Oh,
thank you. Like you're listening finally, finally. Yeah. And I share that story all the time because I actually believe that was like my entry point. That was my body saying like, okay, you've done all of these other things. You've tried all these other ways. You've been hustling and willpowering and disciplining and all of these ways, and they haven't worked for you. What else can we try? And a friend shared a podcast with me that ended up having you as the guest. And just the way that you talked about deepening a relationship was new to me. It wasn't what I was I didn't know what I was looking for. I was just hoping for something to help me. I don't know if it was the next quick fix or something. And I reached out to you and I, got introduced to the Mastering Mindfulness. And I can remember that feeling of like investing in myself and feeling that resistance. Like, is it worth it? Is this just going to be another thing? And I just decided to take a chance on myself. And what I've noticed every time I look back, even though a big underlying story that has lived in my body, like a limiting belief that has lived in my body, has always been, I just don't think I can. But when I look back at my history and my past and all of the decisions that I've made, I've always believed in myself. There's always been something that's like, well, you took that chance and you took this risk and you did this thing and you moved overseas. And I was like, wow, actually, there's a lot of courage here. There's a lot of bravery here,
Yeah, it feels almost like your mind has all of these doubts and disbeliefs, but then there's also this stronger part of you that doesn't actually know what are the logistics, what's going to happen, what's the answers, but I have enough of this deep inner knowing and trust to move towards choosing myself.
Yeah. And hearing you say that out loud, I can still hear the resistance in my body that says, I didn't know that then. I know that now.
Yeah.
I know it deeply in my bones now.
Yeah.
But then I didn't quite know it.
Yeah.
And so to I guess somewhere in, and we talk a lot about like, the knowing is in there.
Yeah.
Just didn't know it.
I know, but isn't that crazy? Because I feel that too when I look back on my journey. Like, I don't think I was like, I'm connected to my knowing and I know that I can do this and I'm going to get to this end destination. I don't know what actually kept me moving forward, but there must have been some sort of knowing and trust that was guiding me to a destination that I didn't even know was possible. Like you said, I didn't know this feeling of like, feeling in connection at home with my body was where I was going. Somehow we landed there, but there is some level of self-trust that's happening that maybe is even underneath the surface. Sometimes I feel like our soul is on its journey before our mind catches up.
100%.
And it's just happening.
That's what's happening in my body, because that's the conversation we were just having a few minutes ago, is like soul contract.
Yes.
Like, this is what I came here to do. This is actually the work that I came here to do. I believe deep down in my gut that actually I chose this path. I chose my mom. I chose her so that I could show her what it looks like to be loved. I could show her what love looks like. But I've got to do that it starts here first.
Oh, I think it's goosebumps.
Yeah. And I remember when I had that awareness, it was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I have so many awarenesses that come through for me that have everything to do with me choosing this life and me choosing this path so that I can learn how to fly, so that I can learn how to like move myself through these obstacles without crumbling, without feeling like I just don't think I can,
And sometimes we look at those deepest pain points as like, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
But it's like, if your soul was here to learn this lesson and evolve and grow, what would I be given to experience it? Just to have a variety of human experiences. And I feel like that. I'm like, my soul was like, I'm coming to learn self-love and self-trust.
Yes, absolutely. And to be a light. Like when I detach from purpose and when I'm out of alignment, and remember, like, what are we doing here? It's not just about the love here. It's about like being that gift in the world, like genuinely feeling like that is actually part of my purpose, And so I talk a lot about staying in the world. And what I mean when I say that is I've created so much yumminess and like safety in here. Like I genuinely have. I love being here. I can close my eyes and I can spend all day by myself and I could feel content. I could feel really satisfied. And I know that alone isn't my gift in the world. And so when I step out into the world, when I'm in certain environments, when I'm in conversation, I'm noticing all of the ways that I'm contracting or I'm expanding or where do I feel safe, and just trying to get myself back into alignment with that yummy, nourishing inside so that I could stay. No matter where I go, no matter who I'm speaking to, no matter what environment, I belong to myself. So I belong everywhere I go.
Yep.
And that becomes part of the mission, that becomes part of the work.
Yeah.
I
for sure want to come back to that and unpack that, because there are probably some people who are so like, yes, I feel that. I use my body as my guide, the expansion, the contraction. Am I in alignment? And there's some people who are probably like, what are you talking about? Your body expands, it contracts, and then it aligns.
Literally.
Are we going to a chiropractor? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So I do really want to break that down and what that looks like in life for you.
Sure.
But also before we do, like, I do want to really honor these like parts of your story. And as you were getting ready to cross over that, to me, it almost feels like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, where he says, you're getting ready to cross over the threshold from what you know and what feels safe and move into the unknown world. To me, it's like what this work is like when you're like, I'm ready to move forward. And so I'm just kind of curious what you were experiencing at that time and how you were feeling as you were getting ready to do something different and take a different path.
I am a learner at heart. Like, I get excited and giddy when it comes to like school. And I feel like you talk a lot about that too. Like, I'm a nerd here and all of those things. I like to geek out on certain things too. So there was an element. Yeah. Once I said yes, I was like, okay, here we go. I found childcare for our calls. Like, I really committed and made it a point to show up and to be there and to be a student. And so I was excited. I was actually excited to start learning. It was like revolutionary to me to learn that, first of all, I had essentially learned to turn to food for comfort, for not just the negative emotions, for everything under the sun. It was like, you're feeling joy, you want a reward, you feel sad, you feel lonely, all of the things. And I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that. And so I was really excited to start. Like, you talk a lot about being your own research project. I was like, that is so dope. I love it. Like, yay. Everything is a data point.
Yes.
Everything is a data point. That's like the nerdy part in me that just loves it. I'm like, data point. Yep. I didn't know that about myself. So going into it, I think that I was excited, but not excited because I was like, this is going to do it for me. It was more like, I'm just getting to know myself. I think subconsciously there was a lot of, is this really going to work? Mm-hmm. And as we started to go through the process, and as I started not reprimanding myself or guilting myself or shaming myself when I reached for a quote unquote bad food, it was like, actually, if I'm a student and I'm being a quote unquote good student right now, that's not the work. The work is just to notice what's happening. Okay. I'm standing in front of the pantry. You just had lunch. I'm not hungry. I just got full body chills right now. You just had lunch. You're not hungry. What is my body trying to tell me right now? And now the process is so familiar. I can feel a full body sensation, like just speaking to it. But at the time it was so new, and I was like, I don't know what this feeling is. Yeah. And you know what the feelings were? They were simple. They were every feeling it was boredom. It was hard. It was like, oh, I'm about to write a hard email, make my way to the pantry. Right. It was, I don't feel like doing it. Work my way to the pantry. It was discomfort, any discomfort that my body felt. And so it's actually, it's been about 5 years since we started this process. Now I've gotten really good and familiar with the sensations in my body. But when I started, it was really just, you're allowed to have the cookie if you want it. Mm-hmm. Just notice what's happening in your body. Mm-hmm. And coming back to class and being like, I noticed this, or I noticed that at nighttime when my husband goes to sleep earlier than I do and I'm staying awake on the couch, I feel lonely. So that's when I reach for that snack,
How did you navigate that that experience?
It was really beautiful. I think that because the work that I did with you, I coupled it with a lot of embodiment and somatic work around like really just, I've spent the last 5 years feeling the heck out of my feelings, all of them, you know? And so it was uncomfortable, but there's this layer of like, look at you doing this thing that's uncomfortable. It's just not the everyday thing. And so people may not fully understand it from the outside looking in. It may look like I'm not doing anything, but to understand that actually I've done everything. Like I've literally built a new foundation with which I can continue to build from here. I don't know. I just feel a lot of gratitude.
I mean, what you said is so powerful because if you think about how many people are stuck in these patterns every night, like, why can't I just stop this snacking at night and just constantly in these cycles? And we're really told that just try harder and how painful that is. And to see when I asked you about your experience with just getting to know yourself, and your answer right now is it was beautiful, and how special that is that it can be a beautiful, like sacred moment with ourselves and our bodies, and how you can tune into your body now and say, oh, I know what that sensation is. I know what that feeling is. And it's like my body is trying to communicate and get my attention of, hey, I need something. I'm needing you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's devotion.
Oh.
It's devotion to her, to this sweet girl. Like the relationship that I've established with this, I mean, so many parts. I've also done a lot of parts work. And, I've gotten in just like deep relationship with so many of my internal parts. And like, one thing for me that was really, 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 really important to understand, which is why I think it's so cool when we learn about ourselves, was understanding my relationship to the word discipline. There was so much shame associated to the word discipline. Why? Because I didn't have it, quote unquote, right? It was like I could never get that part down. It felt like I was always starting on one path and then steering off the path and just like crashing and burning, is how it always seemed. And so when I finally understood, oh, actually, that's not the case. It's my relationship to the word discipline. And I want to share this with people because I think it's important. It really helped me, this perspective shift. I always saw discipline as control over my body. So the word discipline related to everything that I ate or how I moved my body, like how many calories am I eating, that whole dialogue. And so every time I would try to change this relationship with my body, I said I wanted this thing, but I would just keep sabotaging myself. I was like, why is that happening? Oh, I have this really rocky resistance to the word discipline. And then I got introduced to the concept of self-leadership. And it felt so different from the outside looking in. It's literally very similar, right?
Okay.
You're making choices. You're making choices that are good for you.
They seem disciplined.
They seem disciplined, right? Like you're moving your body. You're choosing nourishing foods. They seem disciplined. But the discipline felt like a have to. It felt like a contraction. And the self-leadership feels like an I get to. It feels like devotion. It feels like I get to move my body because I want to be 80 years old and I want to feel good in my body. I want to look good in my body too, I get to choose good, yummy, nourishing foods because I'm devoted to this being, this body. Like, wow, what a gift, right? And so when I started really shifting that concept for me, and let me be totally clear, I don't have it 100% right all the time. I mean, who are we kidding?
What does that mean?
I don't even know. I mean, there are times where I'm so disconnected from myself, it takes me longer to come back and to make those good choices. But in the last 5 years, I've really, really been able to close the gap between when I fall out of alignment and when I get back into alignment. Where what used to maybe take weeks or months, and I would go down really rocky paths for a long time and sabotage and feel that hopelessness. Yeah. Now it might be a day. It might be a couple minutes, where I'm like, ooh, who do you want to be in the world? Yeah. How do you want to show up?
I think you said something so important about that self-leadership, because I think where a lot of the misconceptions come in is that if I love myself, that means that I'm giving up on myself or changing.
Yeah.
And I love the energy that sounded so powerful and so whole and so loving of devotion. And I get to do this for myself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be you're suffering in discipline or you're loving yourself, and because you love yourself, you have to be unhealthy. There can be this, it's devotion. I love the word self-leadership. I never really heard it explained like that before.
Yeah, I love it too. Who do you want to be in the world? How do you want to show up in the world? Are these choices in alignment with how you want to show up in the world? Right? And I hear you completely, because also the last 5 years, I worked so hard. I efforted and I tried and I broke down so many layers to become really soft and gentle and tender and compassionate. And then I bumped up against this place where I think a lot of people might get to, where it's like, I'm a little, what's happening here? This feels a little too soft.
I did the same thing. I understand so much.
It was like, okay, sweetheart. Now but that was actually the removing the old.
Yes.
That was the new foundation.
Yeah.
You know, the new foundation, it was like, we're gentle and we're soft, but from here we get to start rebuilding our backbone
in a different, healthy way.
Exactly.
I did the exact same thing. I can relate to that so much, where there was so much efforting and discipline and restriction and punishment. And then when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, my body is dying for gentleness.
Yeah.
And it was like, screw the discipline. I am sleeping in. I am doing nothing. And I turned into like a puddle of feminine mush. And then I was like, well, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And I never thought of the word self-leadership, but I was like, okay, maybe I should bring in a little more structure and discipline, but in a whole new, way different relationship to it that feels more like I get to, and it feels very in tune with the feminine parts of me too, that are in tune and gentle and soft. And actually, I think it's far more powerful to harness those aspects of ourselves in a healthy way versus just trying to use force and feeling so out of alignment with ourselves.
Completely. It's empowering. It is. It's strength. It feels like I'm in a process right now of fortification, is what I call it. You know, it's like strengthening the backbone, really strengthening that, because so much of my work is compassionate, is gentle. That's a part that I have to constantly bring back into the conversation, is we're not enabling ourselves, right? We're not enabling ourselves here. We're discovering ourselves. We're learning about, we're learning about who we are. We're learning about what motivates us. We're learning about what drives us. And then we're using that as opportunity to get to wherever it is that you're going. Like, who are you becoming? Who are you desiring to be in the world? And I use that language over and over again with myself when I find myself out of alignment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So as you start going into this journey and this work, what are some of the I don't know if it's practices or things that started helping you, that became helpful tools or practices that started to shift things?
There's a lot of different things. I'm trying to think, where do I want to start with this? I definitely want to say breath work was very powerful for me. But just coupling that with a lot of inner child work, getting familiar with who's running the program, who's running the show. If people aren't familiar with what inner child work is, it's just familiarizing ourselves with the parts of us the younger versions of us, right? That 7-year-old little girl that stood in the kitchen, and when my uncle walked in and said, "Look how fat you are," that little precious girl, really getting familiar with her and reparenting. I think that's another thing, like the inner child work and the reparenting work has probably been the strongest tool that I've used over the course of the last 5 years. If someone, and this isn't me pointing fingers, but if there had been a loving adult or a loving witness in that moment that simply said something so simple, that said, "Oh, sweetheart, that was not very nice of him to say that." That's it. right? To validate the feeling, to let it clear through, right? Like so much of our programming happens in those first 7 years. It's like, how many experiences did I have where if I had just been able to not hold on to that contraction, and have it not live in my body. So a lot of inner child work, a lot of, writing letters to myself. Breath work was absolutely a big component for me because I think that you just get to access a part of your brain that gives you access to things like neuroplasticity. It turns on your emotional body. And so you're not just thinking so much, you're trusting in the wisdom of your body. And I always say, because I facilitate breath work often, our bodies are so wise. There's nothing to figure out when you're in the middle of a practice. Just listen. Yeah. You just get to be with yourself, and you'd be so surprised with what comes through, that memory or that image or that emotion. And there's nothing to figure out. It's just like, here we are.
What is it with breath work that does create such healing, especially for people who have never experienced it before? What is that experience like that can be so healing?
I think it's really tapping into the wisdom of the body. I'm not sure how else to say it, to express it. I think it's, we live so much in our heads. Yeah. We spend so much time on autopilot. We spend so much time in survival that we don't give ourselves the opportunity to explore our being in a state of calm, And so when we do practices like breath work, we're activating, so let me be clear. I facilitate a lot of transformational breath work, which is intended to be an activating breath work. But even a simple breathing practice, inhaling through your nose, exhaling on a sigh, right? Practices that are so simple like that activate your parasympathetic nervous system, that get you out of that survival mode, that get you into your body. I just think it gives you access to repatterning.
And for some people who are like, well, what does that mean, get you into your body?
I know.
I just noticed that when you had us take that breath, as soon as we did that, I noticed that my attention was here, and then all of a sudden I felt my body when we did that. Yeah. And so it's so interesting how one breath, and anyone can try this right now, if you take one slow breath, how immediately your awareness moves from here to here. And it was like 5 seconds ago, I felt numb to my body. And then one breath, like one deep, slow breath, woke up the sensations in my body. Yeah. What's so interesting is I read a book by the psychologist Alexander Lowen, and he said that children learn to hold their breath to keep them from feeling. They're like, oh, like, don't cry, don't cry. So they hold their breath when you're like trying not to cry. Yeah. And so one of the ways to connect to your feelings and your emotions is to take a big slow breath, and that like opens up sensations in your body and your emotions. And I was like, oh, I bet you that's probably a big connection of why people have big emotional releases when they do breath work, because they're maybe for the first time really taking a breath that allows their emotions and the connection between their body and their emotions to finally sync up again. Yeah,
we're not taught how to breathe. I mean, and we're lucky, right? Because our breath is part of our autonomic nervous system. We don't have to think about breathing. We don't have to think about our heart beating. We don't have to think about our food digesting. But it's the exception to the rule that we have the capacity to control it if we choose to do so.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It's the only thing. I can't control how my food digests. Right. I can't control how my heart beats. I can choose to control how I breathe. And you brought up a really cool memory for me, actually. One of the first times I ever did a breath work, I literally, Gina, I found myself, and the teacher was like, and breathe. I was like a mummy holding my breath. And I was so comfortable. And I had this awareness in that moment, like, this is your like go-to. You're not breathing.
Oh, that's what felt comfortable to you, not breathing.
I was so comfortable. I was like a mummy, and it just felt safe and cozy, not breathing. And in that moment, I was like, wow, you're just trying to be as tiny as you possibly can and not breathe and not take up space. Breathe, my love. And I remember in that moment, like instructing myself, commanding myself to breathe. And then the following breath work, it was, okay, now sound. And remembering, people are going to think this is crazy, but I'll share it anyways because it was true from my experience. When the instructor says, okay, now sound, and what that means is simply just make a noise, right? And I didn't know how. And the thing that kept coming through was like, and in that moment, I literally was like, there is something in there that is trying to come out. Like there is so much in there that is dying to come out. And breath work for me was such a powerful excavation. It was like shedding layers. And then afterwards it was remembering the experience and just like the reflection process has been so powerful.
How do you think that has rippled out into your life or connection with your body or relationship with food or other people? Or in what ways do you think that type of opening, because sometimes you don't really know how that's going to ripple out into your life until you do it?
I think that I've just been able to become more fully expressed, like without even realizing that I wasn't at the time. Like are we allowed to curse on here? I won't. But like to say that I give a lot less F's about what people think about. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still that desire to show up a certain way or to look a certain way or whatnot. But I notice it now. That's how it shows up differently in my world. I care a lot less about what people think, a lot less. And it just like allows me to move through the world, and just to be more myself, like to be more authentically myself. There's honestly nothing more freeing than that, and to notice, I talk a lot about to notice like when there's a contraction or to notice what makes me feel good and safe. Like that's my favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's circle back to how you use your body as part of your guide or your compass. Like, what does that mean when you say, I feel expansion, contraction, alignment?
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, I think my natural instinct, like a lot of my natural tendencies are contraction, are protection, are, like I can be chopping vegetables in my kitchen, feeling completely at ease with my shoulders in my ears, you know? And so getting to notice that to me feels like a natural contraction, not because I feel unsafe, but so I notice it because I'm constantly checking in with my body.
What do you feel like that means when your body goes into that state?
I think it's familiar. I think it's just an old familiar pattern that's like, oh, this is how you stand, or this is where, it's not even an unsafety mechanism. I'm not even exactly sure. Maybe it is. Maybe something in my body says like, you have to be on guard. Lord only knows. But how I use my body was such a fun question. So many different ways. I think it's like noticing what I equate a contraction is when you're feeling like discomfort in your body. So think anything like judgment, insecurity, doubt, fear. Those are things that I would sort of align a little bit more to a contraction when you're trying to protect yourself, okay? Things that feel expansive to me, I would say they're lighter. They feel more free. They feel more effervescent. They feel more like earlier today, I got a full body chill. Like that to me feels expansive. That feels exciting. Shoulders contracting, that feels like protection.
So when you feel that inside your body, contraction might mean fear or it might mean a no for me. Where if I feel that lightness, that expansiveness, it might show me, yes, I'm on my path, or this is something that I'm aligned with or brings me joy or excitement. Yeah. And so that's kind of how you're sensing inside your body.
Yes. And because I'm noticing so often, some of it is also just old patterning. And so I might not feel unsafety, or I might not feel fear. But when I'm checking in and I'm here, it's an opportunity to expand. It's an opportunity to get back into alignment with how I want to show up in the world.
which I think is so powerful because I feel that in my body too, where before I didn't notice it. I had no awareness of what felt expansive or contracting, had no idea it was happening.
Yeah.
But then when I started to put the dots together, it was like, oh, when my body contracts, there's a discomfort here that I don't want to feel. And that was almost always linked to when I did not feel in control with my food. So now I can sense a tiny contraction and I'm like, oh, my body's telling me something. And instead of being on autopilot of just like check out hypnosis and then being like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, oh, my body's contracting. What's it telling me? What's it feeling? What's it needing?
Yeah.
And it's interesting just how feeling in tune with that sensation completely, it just made such a huge difference in my relationship with food and being able to trust myself and my body.
Oh my goodness gracious, yes.
So I so feel everything that you're saying. It's so funny. Like, you and I really have not had a chance to catch up this deep within, 4 or 5 years. And I'm just so aligned. I'm just so on board with everything that you're saying. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's been my process. That's how I feel it in my body. So it's so amazing.
It's interesting to understand how much of it is solely my path. And I don't believe it's ever just a linear path, It's like I've worked with so many people. I've had so many teachers and coaches. But ultimately, I feel like that is the journey, right? Like that is maybe not a process, but that's been the experience for me. And I just love being on this side, knowing that, yes, I have a lot more room to grow. I mean, forever and ever and ever. And I'm comfortable with that. I've gotten to a point where I think the compassion and the acceptance is probably the biggest reward. Like Gina, I have moved terror through my body. I used to wake up in the morning first thing and just be like, I have to lose weight. Like it was terror. It was horrible. And then I learned how to move that through my body. I breathed through it, and I would notice and I'd be like, wow. And then terror turned into fear. And I would wake up and I was like, And usually when I felt those things, it was when I would start reaching for something outside of myself. Like I would start researching the diet pills, or it was always when I was in that state.
Reactive.
Like, I just don't think I can, right? And then I would have to ground my energy and say like, oh, I got you, sweetheart. That was an old part that's just like fearful and she's scared.
And she's probably that young girl who someone made a comment and then she went into panic.
That's right. That's right. I just don't think I can, And it's like, oh, baby girl. A lot of the dialogue that I have with myself is like, do you know how old I am?
Yeah.
I'm in my wise adult body. Sometimes like, do you know how old I am? And she's like 14. I'm like, nuh-uh, baby girl. I'm in my wise adult body now, and I've got you. I've got you, Yeah. So there's this really sweet, tender inner dialogue that I've developed with myself that is game changer, especially as a mom of a tiny little one, because the way I speak to myself is now also the way that I get to speak to her,
I remember when I first met you and you sharing one of the reasons that you're like, I want to do this. I want to do this for my daughter.
Yes.
I want her to have a different dialogue with herself and her body. Yes. And you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Perfectly imperfect, but I'm trying. I'm really trying.
Yeah. Are there any other practices that you like to do that have been really helpful for you?
I just love getting outside. I like to get into nature. I like to, some might say the woo-woo stuff, like putting my feet in grass.
Yeah.
And literally there are times where I feel disconnected and I'll just go outside and I'll lay on the ground.
Yeah.
And I'll reconnect with myself. Maybe I'll take a notebook with me and I'll just the other day, this happened just the other day. I shared about it. I found myself standing in front of the pantry. And I literally said out loud to myself, I was like, this is your work.
This is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
This is it. Like in real time, baby girl, what do you need in this moment? What are we trying to avoid? Because the tender is necessary, but so is the firm love. What do you need in this moment? I'm not going to enable you to just choose this right now because we have the capacity to do something different. And it makes me emotional because it's emotional. It's an emotional process.
It is.
When you're reparenting yourself, when you're leading yourself, like you're going through it.
And rebuilding self-trust. It was lost for a long time.
Yes, I know. I remember you used to say, imagine you're in a toxic relationship with someone for so long, right? And then suddenly it's like you lost trust.
Every day. Yeah, it takes...
I don't know about this one.
Yeah, it's a deep... This is like and this is not a process that has a finish line. It's like the work of your life, the relationship that I keep fighting for, that I don't give up on.
100%.
No matter what.
100%. There's a part of me that I've given her a name. Her name is Ursula. And so if you imagine Ursula from The Little Mermaid, her personality, it's not so much her look, it's her personality. She's like, don't worry, honey, I got you. Just have this little snack. Don't worry. Everything's going to be just fine. So that's the part of me that often wants to take the lead. It's like, don't worry, just have the snack. We'll figure it out later, you know? And so I was really speaking to her and I was like, what do you need in this moment? And I got still. That's another practice. I mean, it sounds so simple and like, what do you mean you get still? I stand with myself and I breathe. And I listen to myself and I just, and I heard this little voice and she said, I have so much to do and I don't know where to begin. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
I know that voice.
Yeah.
Very well.
That makes a lot of sense, my love. Okay. What might feel good in this moment? And because I've done this so long, it was like, I just need to clear my mind a little bit. So I did a brain dump, which is literally opening a notebook, taking a pen, and just writing anything that comes to mind. I got to a point where I was just scratching in my notebook. I have a page of scratches. And my mind got still. It was like 5 minutes. My mind got still. And I just did it until it felt like I was done. Literally scratched. And someone watching it might be like, that's really, really wild. But it's a practice that works because it gets me out of my head and it gets me back into my body. And when I'm there from that place, then I can choose. What do we do from here? What do we choose? Right? And sometimes, let's be honest.
We choose.
Sometimes we choose the snack. And that's okay.
Yep.
Right? Like if it's coming from that place, okay.
Of like, I'm in choice.
Yeah. Okay.
Not reactivity.
Yeah.
It feels so in connection and gentle and also powerful at the same time.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? When that happens, when that is the choice, I'll get halfway through it and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. It's like it actually hits that satisfaction spot.
Yeah.
Where when it's like full of like, this is wrong, this is bad.
Yes.
It's so bad that like all your attention is here and it's like you never taste it. And then it's like infinite cookies, never satisfies.
Exactly.
It is such a crazy experience that when it's like you're in tune with your body. Yeah. You feel so much more satisfied from everything when you give yourself permission.
Yeah, when you get into this level of relationship with your body, you know, I was in a state of disconnection for about 2 days not too long ago. And I took myself to the gym. I was moving my body. I was lifting weights and I started crying. And I could hear my body like, thank you. You know, she was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And it's just such a beautiful thing. I never would have imagined that this would be where I'm at, you know? Like I imagine this a lot. I imagine anyone seeing me from the outside looking in, especially when I'm in the world or if I'm moving my body, I'm at the gym, I'm exercising, like I am in my own world. Yeah. I'm like on my own little planet, you know, having a great time. Like I'm loving being in the world and like being with myself. Like it's so nourishing in here. She's so lovely. She's so supportive. She's like, she notices all the time. I was like, oh, that wasn't very nice. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I like, okay, we got work to do there.
I love that you said it's not about like being perfect all the time, but the fact that you're like, oh, I lost this connection for 2 days and then I came back and I cried and it was beautiful. And then and I was hard on myself. Then I was like, hey, that wasn't very nice. And, you know, that's really like what it's all about.
That's it. That's literally it. And I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud. Like, and I think maybe I should tell her that more often. I'm sorry if I don't tell you that enough. I'm so proud of myself. You know, it feels really good.
Yeah.
It feels really good.
It's been so beautiful just to watch you share that and not just talk about it, but really fully embody it. And the things that you do share is you real time doing the work. Yeah. You share stuff of like, today was one of those days. Here's what I processed. Here's what I did. And we need more people like that to share. What is it like? How do we build that trust with our body? Whatever it's feeling, doing, needs to share with us. And
brick by brick.
Yeah.
I am perfectly imperfect. And I'll never pretend to have it all together. I'll never pretend to like, you know, have it all figured out. I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's about like, how do we show up for ourselves when we fall, you know, when like to give ourselves grace, like just to be a little bit more gentle, be a little bit more tender.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
And let's say if somebody was kind of feeling like this pull to taking their deeper journey, but had a lot of fears and that doubt and disbelief, what would you want to share with them?
I would say it makes a lot of sense. You know, it makes a lot of sense. I felt that way too. I've known that, or I've learned that some of my deepest, most profound healing has happened in community, has happened when I have shared parts of myself that I never wanted anyone to see. And they were seen and they were heard and they were witnessed and they were held and they were loved. There is something incredibly beautiful about that. So if you're in a position right now where you're like, I just don't know, just get yourself in community. You know, get yourself in community and start practicing. Just start practicing, stretching a little bit outside of your comfort zone, sharing a little bit more vulnerably, talking about like what's actually happening in your life, not so that others can accept you, but so that you can just practice what it feels like to show up as yourself. You know, deeper acceptance.
That's very well said. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your vulnerability and your authenticity.
I love you so much.
Is there anything else you want to leave people with? I mean, I think that's really beautiful.
I think that start to notice. Like notice your inner dialogue. You know, if I talk a lot about community, but really foundationally, like you get to become your best friend. You get to become your biggest supporter. You get to become your biggest cheerleader. But first you have to understand and hear what's happening inside of you. That inner voice, that inner dialogue. Is it nourishing you? Is it knocking you down? I'll say one last thing. I talk a lot of my work. I talk about coming home to yourself. And so I want you to imagine that there are two homes. And in one home, you're received with love and gentleness, and you're allowed to make mistakes. And in the other home, you're criticized and you're judged and you're, you know, like everything you do, nothing you do is ever good enough. What home would you want to come back to? I know which home I would want to come back to, right? And so just really start to notice what that inner dialogue, what does it sound like? Is it supporting you? Is it berating you? And just get curious with it, right? You don't there's nothing to fix. Just start to notice it. That's where I would begin.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I love you.
I love you too so much. It feels like our souls were meant to meet and grow together. And this is finally, we've known each other for 5 years, and we're just for the first time actually meeting in person.
In the flesh.
Finally. And we're going to have a whole weekend together in a retreat experience, tuning in and listening to our bodies the whole weekend.
It's a dream.
So it truly is such a beautiful journey that we're both on together, and I'm always growing too. And so thank you for sharing your story. There's so much here, so much wisdom that I know people are going to take away, and I'll be sure to leave any information about your coaching or your things that you have coming up in the notes where people can reach out.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, you guys. I hope you got a ton of wisdom from this. We'd love to hear what you think of it, and we'll see you next time.